Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show. Most people that come to prison, man, it's not out of some honorable deed that they did or trying to protect somebody. It's usually about some bull, trying to get some money, whatever the case may be. And they didn't think it was, a bad idea at the time, But this story is not about that type of dude. This dude came to prison for something that he really believed in, you know what I'm saying? And he was trying to protect the people that he loved the most, His brother's name is Chuck. And when I heard this story, I was kind of blown away because Chuck is like one of these unassuming type dudes, that walk around in here and he don't ever really bother anybody. He stay to himself. He'll kick it here and there with people, he likes sports, he's a avid football fan and all that other old kind of stuff, And we were talking one day, this is after I'd heard his story. We were talking one day and I asked him, man, like, what got you to the point to where you were able to come to grips with your situation and just accept it for what it is, right? And he said it depends on the reason that a person comes to prison that'll make them accept responsibility for what they did or accept their circumstances for what they did. And I understood all of what he was trying to say, right? But I'm going to share this story with you, and I want you to come to your own conclusion, your own understanding about Chuck, and see if somewhere in you is there a Chuck. Do you express or do you have those same type of traits that Chuck has, or are you just one of those people that well, you know what? I'm going to quit doing that. I'm going to get straight to the story, right? Chuck and Regina. Regina is Chuck's gal, right? But let me tell you the story about Regina and Chuck. When Regina and Chuck were younger, back, 20s, early 20s, they were both single. They liked each other, but Chuck had a friend named Reggie. And Reggie, he liked Regina. Liked her a lot, and wanted to be with her. Now, Chuck, being the type of dude that he was, he really wasn't looking at Regina like that at this particular time and all this and that, right? But he liked her. He was one of them real, introverts. He didn't say what he meant and all this and that, right? And if somebody else were to come along, he'll move out of the way. You know what I'm talking about? So when Reggie told Chuck, man, I would like to holler at her, man. Would you introduce me? Chuck was a little set off by it, but he was like, man, talk to her yourself. And he was like, you don't mind? He was like, nah, I don't mind. She ain't with me. You know what I'm saying? So, every day after that, for a month or so, every time Chuck would be somewhere, because they worked at the same factory, and on lunch break, outside the factory that they worked, they had these picnic tables, and they would all be sitting out eating. And Chuck and Regina, they always sit together. So Reggie started making his way over there, just interfering with the conversation that they had going on, trying to, impose his will on the situation. And Regina, not being mean, her and Chuck both mild-mannered dudes. They didn't mind him sitting there and he talking and laughing and whatnot, but no big deal to them. She really wasn't interested in him that way, but he was interested in her that way. So a party was being thrown by mutual friends of theirs. And they all had been invited. And, Regina, this was one of her home girls, So she was cool with it. She and this girl grew up together and all this and that, right? So they went to the party. So when Chuck and Reggie were on the way to the party, Reg is telling Chuck, this is going to be the night that he gets with Regina and all this and that. And it sets Chuck off a little bit. He don't like really what he's hearing, but he don't say nothing. He keeps his mouth shut, right? So anyway, they get to the party, and you know how it was back in the day. You got the blue light or the red light going in the slow jams. You got Teddy P on the thing, or Luther, or Freddie Jackson, or something like that, or Anita Baker. You know what I'm talking about. Everybody doing their thing and huddling up and talking and this and that. And Chuck, he's on the sideline watching. And Regina, she's out there dancing and with different guys or whatever the case may be, but she makes her way over to Chuck. And she asked Chuck, do you want to dance? And he's, like I say, he's shy, introvert, but he's like, yeah, that's cool. He gets out there, she know he ain't just the smoothest dude, but she like Chuck. Chuck a cool cat, right? So they're dancing, fumbling all over the place and whatnot. And here he comes. Here comes Reggie. He swoops in. And he's dancing and all this and that. And of course, Regina got a couple of drinks in her and all this and that, right? And she's feeling loose. So still not interested, though. She's not interested. Not like that. So Chuck moves to the side and all this and that. He goes over, with a punch bowl and he just chilling and whatnot. And then here comes Reggie. And he scoops up, 2 scoops of the juice, you know what I'm saying? And right then and there, Reggie thought he saw him drop something in the cup, but he wasn't sure. But he looked at him, he said, man, don't play with her. And Reggie looked back at him and said, man, what are you talking about, man? No, I ain't nobody messing around like that, man. Everything's straight. And he got that grin on his face, though. So he goes back, over to Regina, and Reggie gives her a little couple punch, and then they both down. And, it's got a little look in it, too. It's spike, y'all. You know how it go back in the day. So they over there dancing, and all of a sudden, after about 5 or 10 minutes, Chuck sees Reggie and Regina walking up the steps. They going up the steps, and he don't, he's upset, but he don't interfere. He don't interfere because she's grown. She do what she want to do. His feelings hurt, though. So he stays there, and after a few minutes, he gets antsy, and he attempts to walk up the steps, then he turns around, and he does it again and turns around. He's like, he don't want to walk in and see that. Plus, it's not his business, and what could they be doing that involved him and would justify him coming up the steps? He's trying to figure out a reason to go up the steps, but he can't figure out now. So he stays down there. 5 minutes go by. 30 minutes go by. An hour go by. People start clearing out. People start leaving. And then he looks up and he sees Reggie leave. He's coming down the steps real fast. And he's gone. He leaves out. So Chuck's waiting on Regina to come down the steps. But 5 minutes go by, 10, 20. She don't come down the steps. So it's almost empty at this crib. You know what I'm saying? So he walks up the stairs and he finds Regina sprawled out on the bed, up under the sheet, of course, but you could see her clothes were all over the place. All over the place. And it looked like she had some bruises on her face. So he runs into the restroom that's in that room and wets a rag, comes out, wipes her face and cleans her up and all, and she comes to and she's crying. She said, "What happened to me? What happened to me?" And he's like, "You don't know?" And she was like, "No." She said the last thing she remembered is that he smacked her. And Chuck said, "Reggie smacked you?" She said, "That's the last thing I remember. Him hit me and I fell down on the bed." And so when she raises up, of course she looks down and she sees that she doesn't have any clothes on, and she could tell that, something had happened. You understand? So she starts to cry and talks about her mama's gonna kill her, you know what I'm saying, all this and that. Now, keep in mind, she's a grown woman, but she's not that type of person. You know what I'm saying? She really values her mother's opinion about her and all this and that, and these different types of things. So she's worried of what her mother's gonna think and everything. And so Chuck tells her, said, "Look, I'm gonna take care of this." And she's like, "How? How are you going to take care of this?" So she starts scrambling. She's putting on her clothes and all this and that. And she asks him, would he take her home? And he does. He walks her home. She gets to the house and she tells him to promise to never say anything about this. And he promises her that he wouldn't say a word about it to anybody. Nobody. So the next day at work, the next week at work, they're at work and they're on lunch break talking and laughing, and she's feeling a little better and all this and that. And over comes Reggie. And when he comes over, her whole demeanor changes. She stiffens up, And she's acting like she's afraid. So Chuck asked him, "Look, man, you need to go." And he was like, "Why are you worried about what I got going on?" She didn't ask me to leave, but she's sitting there. She's afraid. She's got her head down. Her whole demeanor is off now. So Chuck tells her, he said, "Look, let's get up." So he gets Regina by the hand, and they get up and they walk to another table. Reggie follows him. And he tells him, he said, look, man, stay away from us. She don't want nothing to do with you. So just for the sake of making sure that he understands, he tells Reggie that we're together now. So Reggie looks at him weird like, and like, y'all together now, when did this happen? And he said, just the other day. And he looked at her and he said, huh, okay. You want it like that? Okay. I'll back up. So he backs up. So when he walks away, she was like, you didn't have to say that. And Chuck looks at her. He said, well, I've been wanting to say it anyway. And she said, you've been wanting to be with me? You've been wanting to be my boyfriend, but you never said anything about it? And he said, I just never really felt like, you know what I'm saying, I had the courage to say it until then. But she said, did you mean it? Or do you really want to be with me? Or are you just saying it for him? He said, no, I really want to be with you. And she said, oh, I'm glad, because I've always wanted to be with you. I never saw you like that, but I know you the type of man that I want to be with. And she said, let's give it a try. Let's see. So they, you know what I'm saying, make it official, become boyfriend and girlfriend, and they seal it with a kiss right then and there, you know? A couple of weeks later, she gets sick. She's throwing up. Just awful sick. Doesn't know what's wrong with her. And her mother was looking at her like, something's wrong. I'm going to take you to the doctor. And she asked her, she said, have you been messing around with anybody? You know, that type of thing. Because her mother liked Chuck. And she said, Chuck is a good man. Chuck is a good man. And she was like, no, Ma, I ain't been messing with nobody. She's like, uh-huh. She said, I know how y'all young people are these days, you know? So, time goes on. They get her to the hospital. To the doctor. She gets her doctor appointment, and they find out that she's pregnant. She's pregnant. And she freaks out. And she tells her mother that it's Chuck's baby. Her mother's a little disappointed, but at the same time, it's like, okay, so what are y'all going to do? Are y'all getting married? That's how her mother was. So she was like, yeah. So the mother said, when were you going to tell us? And she said, well, we hadn't made it official yet, but we've talked about it. So when they get home and Chuck comes by the house, the mother's all happy and she hugs him and says, welcome to the family and all this and that. And Chuck is like, what the heck is going on? And she tells Chuck, that, Regina is pregnant and y'all are going to have a baby and I'm so happy for you. We got a wedding to plan and all this and that. Chuck is just like floored, doesn't understand none of this because she hadn't told him anything. She didn't have a chance to tell him. She didn't have a chance. So he plays it smooth. And he's looking at her, she's looking at him, and he knows that she's caught between a rock and a hard place. And he plays along with it. He goes along with everything that she said. And now the situation is dire. The situation is dire because now they're talking. And Chuck and Regina, listen to me, y'all. They ain't never been together. They ain't never been together. And Regina knows that the only person that this baby could be is Reggie. He's the only one that could be the daddy. And it makes her sick at her stomach because she has no memory of it happening. Nothing. Nothing at all. So her and Chuck start talking and she's explaining this to him and she's panicking. And Chuck remembers that he thought he saw Reggie put something in her drink when he was taking her that drink. And then next thing you know, he's running out of the house an hour or so later. And she ends up pregnant a couple of weeks later. But he tells Regina, he said, look, nobody knows but me and you and him. He don't even have to know. We're not going to say anything to him about none of this. As far as everybody will know, this is my baby. I'm the daddy. And she looks at him and she said, you don't have to do that. And he said, yes, I do. And he tells her that he loves her. She said, you don't have to do that. You don't have to tell me you love me because I'm pregnant. I can handle this on my own. And he tells her, you're not going to have to handle this on your own. He said, we're going to get married, and that's the end of it. She's happy. Nobody knows. So they get married. A few months later, 9 months later, of course, she has the baby. And it's a beautiful, beautiful baby girl. It looks just like her. And Chuck is overjoyed. I mean, overjoyed. Everybody is happy. You know, they got this beautiful daughter. They both got decent jobs working at the factory. Everything is looking good. Everything looking like it's going to work out. Nobody knows anything but them. Nobody knows anything but them. And the baby, like I said, looks just like Regina. Looks just like her. So everything is going well. Everything is going fine. And lo and behold, you know, times get hard. Times get hard. And he starts to, you know, hustle a little bit on the side, selling a little weed here and there, just to make ends meet, you know. Nothing major. He don't really want to put himself in a bad situation to where he can be taken away from them. He don't want to do that. He's dedicated to his family. So one day while he was out and about, you know, getting ready to leave from work, Reggie pull up on him and ask him. He said, you got any smokes? And he tells him, yeah, you know, he got some 20 pieces, you know what I'm saying, $20 bags, you know, that kind of thing. And how many do you want? And Reggie wanted a couple of them. So he gets them out and gives them to him, you know, and he goes on about his business. And he said, how was married life? He asked him all kinds of, he said, I love it. I love every bit of it, you know. And he said, how's your daughter doing? And he tells him and all this and that. And he's like, okay. He said, man, I'm just checking, man. You know, I don't get to see you much these days. So on and so forth. All this little small talk, right? But see, Chuck really don't want to mess with this dude. You know what I'm saying? Because he knows this secret. He ain't got no love for this dude whatsoever. At all. He don't care nothing about it. Time goes on. Everything is running smooth. You know, they're getting back on track. He doesn't have to hustle and sell weed anymore, but he keeps doing it just to, you know, have a little extra put away. He's saving his money, doing all the right things. And then one day, their daughter gets sick. And they call the daughter little Riri, short for Regina, you know. Now, Riri gets sick. They have to take Riri to the doctor. She's at the hospital, you know. And for whatever reason, they're running all of these different tests and all this and that, and Regina's mama's there, and blase skippy this and that, and now they got these blood tests going on because whatever it is, she's not feeling well at all. And they figure out that somehow or another, it comes out that Chuck is not the father of this child. And Regina's mother is in the room, and she hears how she said, it's got to be some kind of mistake. And he's like, nah, it's no mistake. This is the doctor. This is the DNA. It's no mistake. So they tell her mother the truth. And her mother goes off. She wants him arrested. She wants something done. She wants to protect her daughter. She's angry that this happened to her daughter. But right now the focus has to be on Riri. The focus has to be on Riri. But for whatever reason, you know, everybody is looking at him like, you know, talking about Chuck, like he's done something wrong. Like he wasn't keeping it 100 with them. You know, her father and all this and that. And if you want to find out how this continues to play out, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode, y'all. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.
I'm getting so tired.